The dust cloud rising behind her was all Adelaide Richardson could see when she glanced back. Heart hammering so hard she thought her ribs might crack, lungs burning as she stumbled through the scrub brush of the Oklahoma Territory in the sweltering August heat of 1884. She had been running for 2 days straight, stopping only when exhaustion forced her to collapse behind rocks or under the sparse shade of cottonwood trees. And now, as the sun climbed higher in the cloudless sky, she knew she could not run much further. Her brown dress, already threadbare before she fled, hung in tatters around her ankles, catching on every bramble and thorn. Sweat soaked through the fabric despite the modest cut that covered her from neck to wrist, and her face burned from a combination of sun and shame. Adelaide had always been a large girl, soft and round in a world that seemed to prefer sharp angles and delicate frames, and running had never come naturally to her. But fear was a powerful motivator, and the fear of what waited behind her in Tahlequah drove her forward even as her body begged to stop. She could see buildings in the distance now, scattered across the rolling prairie like dice thrown by a careless hand. A ranch, perhaps, or a small settlement. Adelaide did not know this part of the territory well. She had lived her whole 22 years in Tahlequah proper, working in her uncle's boarding house after her parents died when she was 15. That boarding house had been her prison for 7 years, and her uncle had been her warden and tormentor. When he announced 3 days ago that he had arranged for her to marry Cyrus Polk, a man of 53 with a reputation for cruelty and 2 previous wives who had died under mysterious circumstances, Adelaide knew she had to run or die. The buildings grew larger as she stumbled closer, and she could make out details now. A ranch house, sturdy and well-maintained, painted white with a broad porch. A barn, red as blood in the morning sun. Corrals and outbuildings, horses grazing in a nearby pasture. It looked prosperous, cared for, loved. Adelaide's throat tightened with longing for such stability, such permanence. She had never known either. Her legs finally gave out when she reached the edge of the property, and she half ran, half fell toward the barn, desperate for cover. If her uncle had sent men after her, and she had no doubt he had, they would be looking for a woman on the road, not hiding on someone's private land. At least she hoped so. Her dress caught on a fence rail and she heard fabric tear, but she did not stop until she was behind the barn, pressed against the sun-warmed wood, trying to quiet her gasping breaths. Adelaide slid down to sit in the dirt, her whole body trembling from exhaustion and fear. She had no plan beyond hiding, no idea what she would do next. She had left Tahlequah with nothing but the clothes on her back and the $3 she had saved, coin by coin, over the past year. That money was still tucked into her pocket, but it would not last long. She needed water desperately. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, and her tongue felt thick in her mouth. But more than water, she needed to not be found. She must have dozed off, because when she opened her eyes again, the sun had moved considerably across the sky, and a shadow fell across her face. Adelaide looked up with a gasp, scrambling backward against the barn, and found herself staring into the bluest eyes she had ever seen. The man standing before her was tall and lean, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that fell across his forehead. He wore work clothes, simple pants and a shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. A hat shaded his face, but she could see his expression clearly, and it was not angry or threatening. Instead, he looked concerned, almost gentle. "Madam." His voice was deep and calm, the kind of voice that might soothe a spooked horse. "Are you hurt?" Adelaide could not speak. Her throat was too dry and fear had stolen her words. She just stared at him, trembling, waiting for him to grab her, to drag her back to town, to hand her over to her uncle and Cyrus Polk. The man crouched down slowly, keeping his distance, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "My name is Vincent Zimmerman. This is my ranch. You are safe here." He paused, studying her face. "You look like you have been through hell. When did you last have water?" Still Adelaide could not speak, but her eyes must have communicated her desperation because Vincent stood and held up one hand. "Stay here. I will be right back." He disappeared around the corner of the barn, and Adelaide considered running again, but her body would not cooperate. She simply did not have the strength. Besides, something in Vincent Zimmerman's eyes had not seemed dangerous. She had learned to read men over her years at the boarding house, had developed an instinct for who might be kind and who might be cruel. And every instinct she possessed told her this man meant her no immediate harm. He returned moments later with a canteen and a cloth. He handed her the canteen first, and Adelaide drank greedily, water spilling down her chin and soaking into her already filthy dress. Vincent said nothing, just waited patiently until she had drunk her fill. Then he wet the cloth and held it out to her. "For your face," he said simply. Adelaide took the cloth with shaking hands and pressed it to her burning cheeks, the cool moisture bringing tears to her eyes. She had not experienced simple kindness in so long that she had almost forgotten what it felt like. "Can you tell me your name?" Vincent asked, still crouched at a respectful distance. "Adelaide," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Adelaide Richardson." "Adelaide Richardson," he repeated, as if testing the name. "That is a pretty name." "Adelaide, I do not know what you are running from, and you do not have to tell me if you do not want to. But you cannot stay behind my barn. The sun will set in a few hours, and it gets cold out here at night, even in August." He gestured toward the house. "Come inside. You can clean up, eat something, rest. Then we can figure out what to do next." Adelaide stared at him, searching for the trick, the trap, the price she would have to pay for his hospitality. "Why would you help me? You do not even know me." Vincent's expression softened further. "Because you look terrified and exhausted, and I am not the kind of man who turns away someone in need. Because it is the right thing to do." He stood and offered her his hand. "Come inside, Adelaide, please." She looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment, calloused and strong, capable of both hard work and gentleness. Then, because she had no better option and because some deep instinct told her to trust him, she placed her hand in his and let him help her to her feet. Her legs nearly buckled, and Vincent steadied her with his other hand at her elbow. He was patient as she found her balance, never hurrying her, never making her feel like a burden despite the fact that she clearly was one. "Can you walk?" he asked. "I think so. The house is not far. Lean on me if you need to." They made their way around the barn slowly, Adelaide leaning more heavily on Vincent's arm than she wanted to admit. Her pride bristled at needing his help, at showing such weakness, but her body gave her no choice. She was simply too exhausted to maintain any pretense of strength. The ranch looked even better up close. Everything was neat and orderly, tools put away properly, fences mended, animals well cared for. This was a man who took pride in his work, who built things to last. Adelaide felt a pang of envy for whoever would eventually share this life with him. Vincent helped her up the porch steps and through the front door into a parlor that was simple but comfortable. The furniture was sturdy and well made, the floors swept clean, the windows letting in afternoon light that made everything glow golden. It was a bachelor's home, lacking the feminine touches that curtains and doilies might provide, but it was welcoming nonetheless. "The kitchen is through here," Vincent said, guiding her through to a room that smelled of coffee and bread. He pulled out a chair at a solid wooden table. "Sit. I will get you some food." Adelaide sat gratefully, her whole body sagging with relief at being off her feet. She watched as Vincent moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, slicing bread and cheese, finding cold chicken from an icebox, pouring milk into a glass. He set it all before her without comment, then turned back to stoke the fire in the stove. "I will heat water for a bath," he said. "You can use the room upstairs. There are clean clothes up there too, things that belong to my mother. They might be big on you, but they will be cleaner than what you are wearing now." Adelaide wanted to protest that she was not small enough for anyone's old clothes, that nothing would fit her, but she was too hungry to argue. She ate slowly at first, her stomach unused to food after 2 days of running, then with increasing enthusiasm as her body remembered what it was to be nourished. Everything tasted impossibly good, even the simple bread and cheese. Vincent worked quietly, filling a large pot with water and setting it on the stove to heat. He glanced at her occasionally, but did not stare, did not make her feel self-conscious about the way she ate or the filthy state of her clothes. When she had finished eating, he poured her more milk and set it in front of her. "Better?" he asked. "Much better, thank you. When the water is hot, I will help you carry it upstairs. The bathing room is small, but it has everything you need. Take your time. I will be outside doing evening chores." "Why are you being so kind to me?" Adelaide asked again, unable to help herself. "You do not know anything about me. I could be a criminal. I could be dangerous." Vincent smiled slightly, the expression transforming his serious face into something warm and approachable. "You could be, I suppose, but you do not look much like a criminal to me. You look like a woman who needs help, and I happen to be in a position to provide it. That is all there is to it." "What if someone comes looking for me?" His expression grew serious again. "Are you in trouble with the law?" "No, nothing like that." "Then whoever comes looking will have to answer to me about why a young woman felt she needed to run so desperately that she ended up half dead behind my barn." His voice was firm, protective even, and Adelaide felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Hope, perhaps, or the beginning of trust. The water took time to heat, and Vincent used that time to gather towels and soap and the promised clothes from upstairs. Adelaide stayed at the kitchen table, too exhausted to move, watching him work and marveling at his matter-of-fact kindness. Men in her experience were not like this. They wanted something in return for every favor, every gesture of supposed generosity. They took and took until there was nothing left to give. But Vincent Zimmerman seemed content simply to help, expecting nothing in return. When the water was finally hot enough, Vincent carried the heavy pot upstairs without apparent effort. Adelaide followed slowly, her legs protesting every step. He showed her to a small room with a tin bathtub and a window that looked out over the prairie. "I will leave everything here," he said, setting down a pile of clothes and towels. "Take as long as you need. I will be in the barn when you are finished. Just call if you need anything." Then he was gone, his footsteps retreating down the stairs and out the front door. Adelaide stood alone in the bathing room, staring at the steaming water and clean towels, and for the first time in 2 days, she allowed herself to cry. Great racking sobs that shook her whole body, releasing fear and exhaustion and the overwhelming relief of being, for this moment at least, safe. When the tears finally subsided, Adelaide undressed slowly, peeling away the ruined dress and undergarments, examining the damage her flight had caused. Bruises covered her legs and arms, scratches from thorns and brambles, blisters on her feet that had broken and bled. She was a mess, inside and out. The bath was heaven. Adelaide sank into the hot water and felt her muscles begin to relax for the first time in days. She scrubbed herself clean with the soap Vincent had provided, working it through her long dark hair, watching the water turn gray with dirt and sweat. By the time she finally emerged, the water was cold and she was shivering, but she felt more human than she had in longer than she cared to remember. The clothes Vincent had left were indeed too large, the dress hanging loose on her frame despite her size, but they were clean and soft and smelled of lavender. Adelaide dressed slowly, examining herself in the small mirror above the washstand. She looked different somehow. Smaller, perhaps, or just less defeated. Clean, certainly, almost respectable. She made her way downstairs carefully, following the sound of movement to the kitchen where she found Vincent had returned and was preparing dinner. He looked up when she entered and something in his expression shifted, softened. "You look better," he said simply. "I feel better. Thank you for everything. Hungry again. I am making stew." Adelaide was surprised to discover that she was indeed hungry despite the meal she had eaten earlier. "Can I help? You should rest." "I have been resting. I would like to help." Vincent considered this, then nodded. "All right, you can peel those potatoes." They worked together in comfortable silence, Vincent chopping vegetables while Adelaide peeled potatoes with a small knife he provided. It felt domestic and strange, this easy cooperation with a man she had met only hours ago, but it also felt right in a way Adelaide could not quite explain. "You are from Tahlequah?" Vincent asked eventually, his tone conversational. "Yes, you know it. I have been there a few times." "It is about 15 miles south of here, not a long ride on horseback." Adelaide's hand stilled on the potato she was peeling. "Are you going to take me back? Do you want to go back?" "No." "Then I am not going to take you back." He continued chopping, not looking at her. "But eventually someone is going to come looking. Your family will be worried." Adelaide laughed, a bitter sound. "My family will not be worried. My uncle will be angry that I have inconvenienced him, but he will not be worried." "You live with your uncle?" "I did. I worked at his boarding house. My parents died 7 years ago and he took me in. Not out of kindness, but because free labor was valuable to him." Vincent's jaw tightened. "And now he wants me to marry a man I do not want to marry. A cruel man. A dangerous man." Adelaide set down the potato and the knife, her hands shaking slightly. "So I ran. That took courage. It took desperation. Sometimes those are the same thing." Vincent scraped the vegetables into the pot on the stove, then turned to face her fully. "Adelaide, you can stay here as long as you need to. I have plenty of room and I could use help around the ranch. It would be honest work for honest pay. You would have your own room, your privacy, your independence. And if your uncle or this man you were supposed to marry come looking, I will send them away." Adelaide stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "Why would you do that for me? You do not even know me." "Maybe I want to know you," Vincent said quietly. "Maybe I think anyone who has the courage to run from a bad situation deserves a chance at a better one. Maybe I am just tired of being alone out here." He paused. "Or maybe all of those things. People will talk. A woman living with an unmarried man. People always talk. I stopped caring about that a long time ago." Vincent stirred the stew, his movements measured and calm. "But if it bothers you, we can make it proper. I will pay you a salary just like any ranch hand. You will be an employee, nothing more." "Well, nothing more unless you want something more someday, but that is getting ahead of things." Adelaide felt her cheeks flush and she looked down at her hands. "I do not understand you, Vincent Zimmerman." "I do not understand myself half the time," he admitted with a slight smile. "But I do know right from wrong, and it would be wrong to send you back to a situation that scared you badly enough to make you run. So you will stay, at least for now, and we will figure out the rest as we go." They ate dinner together at the kitchen table, stew and bread and cold milk, talking about small things. Vincent told her about the ranch, how he had built it up over the past 6 years after buying the land from a family heading back east. He raised cattle and horses, sold them to the army and to other ranchers, did well enough to live comfortably if not lavishly. Adelaide told him about growing up in Tahlequah, about her parents who had run a small general store until fever took them both in the same terrible week, about the boarding house and the endless work, and her uncle's casual cruelty. "He never hit me," she said carefully, wanting Vincent to understand but not quite able to find the words. "But he had other ways of making me feel small, of making me feel like I should be grateful he gave me a place to stay, like I owed him everything including my future." "You did not owe him that," Vincent said firmly. "Nobody owns another person's future." After dinner, Vincent showed Adelaide to a bedroom upstairs across the hall from the bathing room. It was small but comfortable, with a bed covered in a quilt, a washstand, a wardrobe, and a window that looked out over the prairie. The setting sun painted everything gold and orange, and Adelaide stood at the window for a long moment, watching the colors shift and change. "This was my mother's room," Vincent said from the doorway. "She died 3 years ago, cancer. My father passed 2 years before that. Heart gave out while he was working in the fields. I am sorry. Me too, they were good people. They would have liked you, I think. They always believed in helping those who needed it." Adelaide turned from the window to look at him. "You are like them. I try to be." Vincent shifted his weight, suddenly seeming uncertain. "I will be right across the hall if you need anything. There is a lock on your door. Use it if it makes you feel safer." "I do not think I need to lock my door against you." Something flickered in Vincent's eyes, pleasure or relief or perhaps both. "Sleep well, Adelaide. Tomorrow will be better than today, I promise." He left, closing the door softly behind him, and Adelaide was alone in the quiet room. She changed into the nightgown Vincent had provided along with the other clothes, another garment that had belonged to his mother, then slipped between the sheets of the bed. The mattress was more comfortable than anything she had slept on in years, and despite everything, despite the fear and uncertainty and strangeness of her situation, Adelaide fell asleep almost immediately. She woke once in the night, disoriented and frightened, but then she remembered where she was and why, and the fear subsided. Through the window she could see stars, more stars than she had ever seen in town, scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet. Somewhere in the house, she could hear the faint sounds of Vincent moving around, and the knowledge that she was not alone, that someone kind was nearby, let her fall back asleep with ease. Morning came with birdsong and golden light streaming through the window. Adelaide woke slowly, luxuriously, stretching in the comfortable bed before remembering that this was not a dream, that she really was here in Vincent Zimmerman's ranch house, safe and clean and fed. The relief was so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. She dressed in another of the dresses Vincent had provided, this one a soft blue that actually fit reasonably well, and made her way downstairs. She found Vincent in the kitchen, already dressed and clearly ready to start the day's work. He looked up when she entered and smiled. "Good morning." "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in years, honestly. Coffee, please." Vincent poured her a cup and set it before her along with sugar and cream. Adelaide doctored it to her liking and sipped gratefully, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. "I have chores to do," Vincent said, "but there is bread and jam if you are hungry. Make yourself at home. When you are ready, come find me. I will put you to work if you are still interested in helping around here." "I am interested." "Good, I will be in the barn." He left through the back door, and Adelaide sat alone in the kitchen, drinking her coffee and marveling at the strangeness of her new life. Yesterday morning, she had been running for her life. This morning she was drinking coffee in a comfortable kitchen, preparing to do honest work for an honest man. The difference was so stark it almost did not feel real, but it was real. Adelaide finished her coffee, ate some bread and jam, then went outside to find Vincent. The morning air was cool and fresh, the sky a brilliant blue. In the corrals, horses nickered and stamped, and from somewhere nearby she could hear cattle lowing. It was all so peaceful, so far removed from the chaos and noise of the boarding house in Tahlequah. She found Vincent in the barn, mucking out stalls. He looked up when she approached, his face already gleaming with sweat despite the early hour. Ready to work. "What do you need me to do?" He showed her around the barn, explaining the daily routine. Feeding the horses, checking their water, mucking stalls, grooming. There were chickens to be fed and eggs to be collected, a vegetable garden to be tended, butter to be churned. More work than one person could easily handle alone, which was why Vincent was happy to have help. Adelaide threw herself into the work with determination, grateful to have something useful to do, grateful to begin earning her keep. Vincent was a patient teacher, showing her how to do things properly without making her feel stupid for not already knowing. They worked together all morning, talking occasionally but mostly just existing in companionable silence. By noon, Adelaide was exhausted but satisfied. Her muscles ached from unfamiliar labor, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from honest work well done. Vincent called a break for lunch, and they returned to the house where he made sandwiches with yesterday's leftover chicken. "You are a good worker," he said as they ate. "Quick to learn, not afraid of hard work. I appreciate that. I am used to working. The boarding house kept me busy from dawn until well past dark most days. Your uncle did not pay you. Room and board," he said, "was payment enough." Vincent's expression darkened. "That is not right." "No," Adelaide agreed. "It is not, but I did not have much choice until now." "You have choices now," Vincent said firmly. "You can choose to stay or go, to work or rest, to do whatever you think is best for yourself. Nobody is going to force you into anything here." Adelaide felt her throat tighten with emotion. "I choose to stay, if the offer is still open." "The offer will be open as long as you want it to be." They finished lunch and returned to work. The afternoon passed quickly, filled with chores and learning and the simple satisfaction of building something, maintaining something, caring for living creatures who depended on them. Adelaide found herself falling into a rhythm, her body remembering skills she had not used since childhood when her parents were alive, and she had helped in their store. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Vincent declared the workday done. They returned to the house together, both tired and dusty, and Adelaide helped him prepare dinner. It was becoming a comfortable routine already, this domestic partnership. Adelaide found herself relaxing in ways she had not known. She was tense, laughing at Vincent's dry observations about the horses' personalities, sharing stories about growing up in Tahlequah. "You should know," Vincent said over dinner, his tone growing serious, "that I am going into town tomorrow. Just to the general store for supplies. I will not go to Tahlequah, but news travels. Someone might have heard something about a woman going missing." Adelaide's appetite vanished. "Do you think they are looking for me? I would be surprised if they were not." "But that does not mean they will find you. You are safe here, Adelaide. I meant what I said. If anyone comes looking, they will have to go through me first. I do not want you to get in trouble because of me. Let me worry about that." Vincent reached across the table and covered her hand with his, the touch brief but warm. "You are under my protection now. That means something to me." Adelaide looked down at her hand where his had been, feeling the lingering warmth. "Why?" she whispered. "Why does it mean something to you?" "You barely know me." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, then said slowly, "Because I know what it is to be alone. I know what it is to need help and not have anyone to turn to. When my parents died, I had this ranch and my work, but I had nobody to share it with, nobody who cared whether I lived or died beyond what I could sell them. I do not want anyone else to feel that way if I can prevent it." "Is that the only reason?" He met her eyes, his gaze steady and honest. "No, but the other reasons are complicated and it is too soon to talk about them." Adelaide felt her heart skip a beat. "All right," she said softly, "then we will not talk about them yet." That night, Adelaide lay in bed and thought about Vincent's words, about the warmth in his eyes, about the gentleness of his touch. She had known him for barely more than a day, but already she felt more comfortable with him than she had with anyone in years. Was this what safety felt like? Was this what kindness felt like when it came without conditions or expectations? She thought about the way he had looked at her over dinner, the way he seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say, the way he treated her like a person of value rather than a burden or a commodity. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure because Adelaide had learned not to trust good things. Good things did not last. Good things had prices. But maybe, just maybe, Vincent Zimmerman was different. Maybe good things could last if you were careful with them, if you nurtured them, if you had the courage to believe in them. Adelaide fell asleep thinking about possibilities, about futures she had never dared to imagine, about a man with kind eyes and capable hands who had offered her sanctuary when she needed it most. Vincent left early the next morning for town, promising to be back by afternoon. Adelaide spent the day working around the ranch, feeding animals and tending the garden and trying not to worry about what he might hear, who he might encounter, what news might have reached this part of the territory. She kept herself busy, but her mind would not settle. He returned in mid-afternoon with a wagon full of supplies and a serious expression that made Adelaide's stomach clench with dread. She met him in the yard as he was unhitching the horses, her hands twisting in her apron. "What did you hear?" she asked without preamble. Vincent finished with the horses before answering, his movements deliberate and calm. "Your uncle has put out word that you are missing. He is offering a reward for information about your whereabouts." Adelaide felt the color drain from her face. "How much?" $50. $50. She laughed bitterly. "That is more than he spent on me in 7 years, but I suppose his pride is worth the investment. There is more." Vincent turned to face her fully. "He is claiming you stole from him, money from the boarding house. He is saying you are a thief." "That is a lie." Adelaide's voice shook with anger and fear. "I never stole anything from him. The only money I have is what I saved from tips guests gave me, money he did not even know about because he never let me keep anything." "I believe you," Vincent said quietly, "but he has made it a matter for the law now. There is a marshal asking questions, looking for you." Adelaide felt her knees go weak and Vincent caught her elbow, steadying her. "What am I going to do? If the law is looking for me, I cannot just hide here. They will find me eventually." "Then we do not hide," Vincent said firmly. "We face this head on. I will take you to see the marshal myself and you will tell him the truth. Tell him why you ran. Tell him about the man your uncle wanted you to marry. Tell him that you did not steal anything. I will vouch for you." "Why would the marshal believe you over my uncle?" "Because I have a reputation in this territory as an honest man, and because the truth has a way of being convincing when people are willing to listen." Vincent's expression was determined, almost fierce. "I am not going to let your uncle destroy you with lies, Adelaide. We will clear your name. And if we cannot, if the marshal believes him instead of me, then we will figure something else out. But we are not going to run and we are not going to hide. Running and hiding only make you look guilty." Adelaide wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this plan could go wrong, but the conviction in Vincent's voice stopped her. He believed in this course of action absolutely, believed in her innocence, believed that truth and justice would prevail. His faith was so complete that Adelaide found herself wanting to believe it too. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow. We will ride to Fort Gibson where the marshal is stationed. It is closer than Tahlequah and it is neutral ground. We will explain everything and we will end this." That night Adelaide barely slept, running through what she would say over and over in her mind. She had to make the marshal understand, had to make him see that her uncle was lying, that she was the victim here, not the criminal. But what if he did not believe her? What if her uncle had already poisoned the well too thoroughly? What if she ended up arrested, jailed, or worse, forcibly returned to Tahlequah and married off to Cyrus Polk? Morning came too quickly. Adelaide dressed in her best dress, the blue one that fit reasonably well, and braided her hair with shaking hands. She met Vincent in the kitchen where he was preparing a quick breakfast, his face serious but calm. "Eat something," he said. "It is a long ride to Fort Gibson." Adelaide forced down some bread and coffee, her stomach churning with anxiety. Vincent ate methodically, then began gathering supplies for the journey. When everything was ready, they went to the barn where he saddled 2 horses, a bay gelding for himself and a gentle mare for Adelaide. "Have you ridden much?" he asked. "Not in years, but I remember how." "Good. Stay close to me and let me know if you need to rest." They set out under a cloudless sky, the August sun already warm despite the early hour. Adelaide focused on the rhythm of riding, on the movement of the horse beneath her, on anything but the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. Vincent rode beside her, occasionally pointing out landmarks or making observations about the weather, clearly trying to keep her mind occupied. Fort Gibson appeared in the distance after several hours of riding, a military installation that had been established decades ago, and now served as a hub of law and order in this part of the territory. Soldiers moved about on various duties, and civilian buildings had sprung up nearby to serve the fort's needs. It was larger than Adelaide had expected, more official and intimidating. Vincent led them directly to a building that housed the marshal's office. He dismounted and helped Adelaide down, his hands steady on her waist. "Remember," he said quietly, "tell the truth, all of it. I am right here with you." Adelaide nodded, not trusting her voice, and followed Vincent into the building. Inside, a man sat behind a desk, his silver star glinting in the light from the window. He was older, perhaps 50, with gray hair and a weathered face that spoke of years spent outdoors. "Marshal Briggs," Vincent said by way of greeting. "I am Vincent Zimmerman. I own a ranch about 20 miles north of here. This is Adelaide Richardson. I understand you have been looking for her." The marshal's gaze shifted to Adelaide, assessing. "Miss Richardson, your uncle has reported you missing and has made some serious accusations. Would you like to tell me your side of the story?" Adelaide took a deep breath and began to speak. She told him everything about her parents' death, about 7 years of unpaid labor at the boarding house, about her uncle's plan to marry her off to Cyrus Polk, about the fear that had driven her to run. She told him about the $3 in her pocket that she had saved herself, about how she had taken nothing from the boarding house except the clothes on her back, about how she had ended up at Vincent's ranch and the kindness he had shown her. Marshal Briggs listened without interrupting, his expression neutral. When Adelaide finished, he sat back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "That is quite a story, Miss Richardson. Your uncle tells a different tale. He says you stole $200 from the boarding house safe and ran off with some man." "That is a lie," Adelaide said firmly, her voice stronger than she felt. All the money I have is $3. You can search me if you like. As for running off with some man, I came to Mr. Zimmerman's ranch by accident, seeking only a place to hide. He has been nothing but respectful and kind. Can you verify this, Mr. Zimmerman? I can, Vincent said. Adelaide arrived at my ranch 3 days ago, exhausted and terrified, hiding behind my barn. I offered her shelter and honest work. She has been staying in my mother's old room as my employee, nothing improper. As for the money, I can confirm she has only a few dollars. She showed them to me when we discussed her wages. The marshal considered this. Miss Richardson, you say your uncle wanted you to marry Cyrus Polk. Yes, sir. And you refused? Yes, sir. Mr. Polk has a reputation for cruelty. His previous wives both died under mysterious circumstances. I feared for my life. Cyrus Polk is known to this office, Marshal Briggs said carefully. We have had complaints about him before, though nothing we could make stick. He is not a good man, I will grant you that. He paused, studying Adelaide's face. Your uncle claims you are unstable, that you have fits of fancy and cannot be trusted. My uncle lies to suit his purposes, Adelaide said, feeling anger override fear. He lies because I am inconvenient to him now. He lies because I dared to refuse the fate he chose for me. But I am not crazy, and I am not a thief. I am just a woman who wanted a better life than the one I was being forced into. Marshal Briggs was quiet for a long moment, his gaze moving between Adelaide and Vincent. Finally, he said, I am inclined to believe you, Miss Richardson. Your story has the ring of truth, and your demeanor does not suggest instability or dishonesty. However, I cannot simply ignore your uncle's claims. I will need to investigate further. What does that mean for Adelaide? Vincent asked. It means she is free to go for now, but she must remain available for further questioning if needed. I will ride to Tahlequah myself and speak with your uncle, Miss Richardson. I will examine the boarding house accounts and speak with the guests there. If I find evidence that you stole money, I will have to act accordingly. But if I find, as I suspect I will, that your uncle has made false accusations, then he will be the one facing consequences. Relief flooded through Adelaide so powerfully she felt dizzy. Thank you, Marshal. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. This is not over. Where will you be staying? With me, Vincent said firmly. At my ranch. She is under my protection. Marshal Briggs nodded slowly. See that you keep things proper, Zimmerman. I do not want to have to deal with any additional complications. You have my word as a gentleman. They left the marshal's office and walked back to their horses in silence. Adelaide's legs felt shaky and she had to grip the saddle to steady herself before mounting. Vincent helped her up, his touch gentle and reassuring. You did well, he said quietly. You told the truth clearly and calmly. The marshal believed you. This is going to work out. What if he finds something in my uncle's accounts? What if my uncle has manufactured evidence? Then we will deal with that when it happens. But I think Marshal Briggs is a good man and a smart one. He will see through any lies your uncle has constructed. They rode back to the ranch in the afternoon heat, both quiet and lost in their own thoughts. Adelaide felt wrung out emotionally, exhausted by fear and adrenaline, and the sheer effort of confronting her situation head-on. But underneath the exhaustion was a fragile hope. The marshal had believed her. He was going to investigate. Maybe, just maybe, this would turn out all right. When they reached the ranch, Vincent took care of the horses while Adelaide went into the house and collapsed into a chair at the kitchen table. Her whole body ached, and her mind felt fuzzy and slow. She heard Vincent come in through the back door, heard him moving around the kitchen, and then he was pressing a glass of cool water into her hands. Drink this. Then you should rest. It has been a long day. Adelaide drank obediently, then looked up at Vincent. "Thank you for coming with me, for vouching for me, for believing me. I told you I know right from wrong. What your uncle did to you was wrong. What he is doing now is wrong. I could not stand by and let it happen without trying to help. Most men would not have gotten involved. Most men would have sent me away the moment they found me behind their barn." Vincent pulled out a chair and sat down across from her, his expression serious. "I am not most men, Adelaide. My parents raised me to help people in need, to stand up for what is right even when it is inconvenient or difficult. They raised me to see people, really see them, not just use them for what they could provide. When I found you behind my barn, I saw a woman in desperate need of help. Everything since then has just been doing what needed to be done." "Is that all you see when you look at me?" Adelaide asked, surprising herself with her boldness. "A woman in need of help." Vincent's gaze held hers, and something shifted in his expression, something warm and deep and unmistakably tender. "No," he said quietly, "that is not all I see, not anymore." "What else do you see?" He reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "I see a woman who is brave and strong and kind. I see someone who worked for 7 years without complaint in a situation that would have broken most people. I see someone who had the courage to run when running was the only option, who survived 2 days alone in the wilderness, who faced a marshal and told her truth without flinching. I see someone I want to know better, if you will let me." Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes. "Vincent, I am not what you think I am. I am not brave or strong. I am just a girl who got scared and ran. And I am not," she hesitated, then forced herself to continue, "I am not small or pretty or graceful. I am just ordinary at best." "You are not ordinary," Vincent said firmly. "You are extraordinary. And as for the rest, you are exactly what you are supposed to be. I do not want small or delicate. I want real. I want honest. I want you, Adelaide, exactly as you are." The tears spilled over, running down Adelaide's cheeks. Nobody had ever said anything like that to her before. Nobody had ever looked at her the way Vincent was looking at her now, like she mattered, like she was valuable, like she was wanted just for being herself. "I do not know what to say," she whispered. "You do not have to say anything. Not yet. We have time to figure this out, to figure out what we mean to each other. For now, just know that you are safe here, that you are valued here, that I am glad you came into my life even though the circumstances were terrible." Adelaide nodded, not trusting her voice, and Vincent squeezed her hand gently before releasing it. "Rest," he said. "I will make dinner. Tomorrow we can get back to normal, or as normal as things can be while we wait to hear from the marshal." The next few days fell into a comfortable routine. Adelaide and Vincent worked together around the ranch during the day, falling into an easy partnership that felt natural and right. In the evenings, they would prepare meals together, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's stories and preferences and dreams. Adelaide discovered that Vincent loved to read, that his small parlor actually contained an impressive collection of books that had belonged to his parents. She discovered that he had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh in ways she had not laughed in years. She discovered that he was unfailingly patient and kind, that he never raised his voice in anger, that he treated the animals in his care with the same respect and gentleness he showed to her. Vincent discovered that Adelaide had a gift with the horses, that they responded to her gentle handling and calm voice. He discovered that she was clever and quick-witted, that she remembered everything he taught her and often found ways to improve on his methods. He discovered that she hummed while she worked, unconscious melodies that made the barn feel less lonely. He discovered that her smile, rare at first but growing more common, lit up her entire face and made something in his chest feel tight and warm. They were falling in love, though neither of them said it out loud. It was there in the way Vincent's hand would linger when he helped her down from a horse, in the way Adelaide would seek out his company even when she did not need help with anything, in the way they would catch each other's eyes across the dinner table and smile for no reason at all. A week after their visit to Fort Gibson, Marshal Briggs arrived at the ranch. Adelaide saw him riding up the drive and felt her heart leap into her throat, fear and hope warring within her. Vincent was in the barn, and she ran to get him, her words tumbling over each other. "The marshal is here. He is riding up now. What if he found something? What if my uncle convinced him?" Vincent took her shoulders gently, steadying her. "Whatever happens, we will face it together. Breathe, Adelaide, just breathe." They walked out to meet the marshal together, Vincent's hand at the small of Adelaide's back, a steadying presence. Marshal Briggs dismounted, his expression giving nothing away. "Marshal," Vincent greeted. "Can we offer you some water, coffee?" "Water would be good, thank you. It is a hot ride." They went into the house, Adelaide's mind racing. The marshal drank deeply from the glass Vincent provided, then set it down and looked at Adelaide. "I have completed my investigation, Miss Richardson. I rode to Tahlequah as promised and examined your uncle's boarding house records thoroughly. I also spoke with several of his current guests and with shopkeepers in town who know both you and your uncle." Adelaide held her breath. "I found no evidence that you stole any money. In fact, your uncle's records show no missing funds at all, which makes his accusation nonsensical. What I did find was a pattern of him taking money from guests and claiming they had not paid, then pocketing the difference. Several people corroborated your story about working for him without wages for 7 years. And as for Cyrus Polk," the marshal's expression hardened, "I spoke with him as well. He confirmed that your uncle had promised you to him in marriage and that you had refused. He was quite angry about it, which tells me your instincts about his character were correct. So I am cleared." Adelaide asked, hardly daring to believe it. "You are cleared. There will be no charges. Your uncle, however, is facing some difficult questions about his business practices. And I made it very clear to both him and Cyrus Polk that you are under my protection now, as well as Mr. Zimmerman's, and that any attempt to harass or harm you will result in immediate legal action." Relief made Adelaide's knees weak, and she gripped the edge of the table for support. "Thank you, Marshal. Thank you so much." "You are welcome, Miss Richardson. You did nothing wrong except try to escape a bad situation. I am glad you found somewhere safe to land." He glanced at Vincent. "You are a good man, Zimmerman. Not many would have taken the risk of helping a stranger." "Not much of a risk when the stranger is innocent," Vincent replied. Marshal Briggs nodded, finished his water, and stood. "I will leave you to your lives then. If you have any trouble from your uncle or Polk, you send word to me immediately." "Understood, understood," Adelaide said. "Thank you again." After the marshal left, Adelaide turned to Vincent and burst into tears, great heaving sobs of relief and joy and overwhelming gratitude. Vincent pulled her into his arms without hesitation, holding her close while she cried, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring soft reassurances. "It is over," he said. "You are safe, you are free. It is over." Adelaide clung to him, her face pressed against his chest, feeling his solid warmth, hearing his steady heartbeat. This man had saved her in every way a person could be saved. He had given her shelter and food and protection. He had believed in her when she had barely believed in herself. He had stood beside her and faced down the threat of her past without flinching. When her tears finally subsided, Adelaide pulled back just enough to look up at Vincent's face. His expression was tender and concerned. his eyes searching hers. "I love you," she said, the words emerging before she could think better of them. "I know it has only been a couple of weeks, and I know it is too soon, but I cannot help it. I love you, Vincent Zimmerman." Vincent's face broke into a smile, genuine and joyful and transformative. "It is not too soon. I love you too, Adelaide Richardson. I think I have loved you since I found you behind my barn, terrified and brave and so desperate for safety. I love everything about you. Your strength, your kindness, your laugh, the way you hum when you think nobody is listening. I love you." He kissed her then, a gentle kiss full of promise and tenderness, and Adelaide felt something in her chest unfurl and bloom, something she had thought long dead. Hope, joy, the possibility of happiness. When they finally pulled apart, both a little breathless, Vincent said, "Marry me, Adelaide. Not because you need my protection or because you have nowhere else to go, but because I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Because I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. Because you make everything better just by being here." "Yes," Adelaide said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you, not because I need to, but because I want to, because you are the best man I have ever known, because you see me, really see me, and love me anyway, because I cannot imagine my life without you in it now." They married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at Fort Gibson with Marshal Briggs serving as one of the witnesses. Adelaide wore a new dress that Vincent had bought for her in town, pale yellow like sunshine, and she carried wildflowers that Vincent had picked that morning. It was simple and perfect, everything a wedding should be. Their first year of marriage was full of work and laughter and the slow building of a life together. Adelaide took to ranch life like she had been born to it, her skills with the horses developing into real talent. Vincent relied on her more and more, not just for the work but for her company, her perspective, her unwavering support. They were partners in every sense of the word, building something together that was greater than what either of them could have built alone. The second year brought challenges. A harsh winter killed some of their cattle, and money was tight for several months. But they weathered it together, making sacrifices and working harder, never losing faith in each other or in their ability to survive. When spring finally came and their fortunes began to improve, the victory felt all the sweeter for having been hard won. The third year brought news that made Adelaide cry with joy. She was pregnant. Vincent was over the moon, fussing over her constantly, trying to keep her from doing heavy work even though she insisted she was perfectly capable. Their son was born in February of 1888, a healthy baby boy with Vincent's blue eyes and Adelaide's dark hair. They named him Thomas after Vincent's father, and he became the center of their world. Watching Vincent with their son melted Adelaide's heart in new ways. He was so gentle, so patient, so utterly devoted. He would walk Thomas around the ranch in his arms, pointing out horses and birds and clouds, talking to him in a soft voice about everything and nothing. Adelaide would watch them from the porch and marvel at how far she had come from that terrified girl hiding behind a barn. 2 years later, their daughter arrived, a tiny thing they named Clara after Adelaide's mother. Thomas was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything, and Adelaide and Vincent found themselves juggling the demands of 2 small children while still running the ranch. It was exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Life settled into a rhythm of seasons and growth. The children grew, the ranch prospered, and Adelaide and Vincent's love for each other deepened with every passing year. They faced hardships, as every marriage does, but they faced them together, always talking, always working through problems rather than letting them fester. Adelaide never returned to Tahlequah. She heard through occasional gossip that her uncle's boarding house had eventually failed, that he had left town in disgrace. She heard that Cyrus Polk had finally been arrested for beating a woman in a saloon and was serving time in prison. She felt no satisfaction in their downfalls, just relief that they could no longer hurt anyone else. Her life was here now, at this ranch with this man and these children. She woke every morning grateful for the chance she had been given, grateful that she had found the courage to run all those years ago, grateful that Vincent had been the kind of man who would help a stranger in need. The children grew into fine young people. Thomas inherited his father's patience and his mother's determination, working alongside Vincent in the ranch operations and eventually taking over much of the day-to-day management as Vincent grew older. Clara inherited her mother's gift with horses and her father's kindness, becoming a skilled trainer whose reputation spread throughout the territory. Adelaide and Vincent grew old together, their love never diminishing even as their hair turned gray and their steps grew slower. They would sit on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of gold and crimson, and Adelaide would think about that frightened girl who had hidden behind the barn so many years ago. "What are you thinking about?" Vincent would ask because he always knew when her mind drifted to the past. "About how lucky I am," Adelaide would reply. "About how one act of kindness changed everything. About how grateful I am that you found me." "I am grateful too," Vincent would say, squeezing her hand. "Every single day." When Vincent died at the age of 78, peacefully in his sleep after a long and full life, Adelaide grieved deeply but not hopelessly. They had had 46 years together, years filled with love and laughter and the satisfaction of a life well lived. She had been loved completely by a good man, and she had loved him completely in return. Not everyone could say that. Adelaide lived another 5 years after Vincent's death, cared for by Thomas and Clara and their families, surrounded by grandchildren who loved to hear stories about how she and their grandfather had met. She told them the truth about running for her life, about hiding behind a barn, about a rancher who had seen her not as a burden but as a person worth saving. "He said, 'Come inside,'" she would tell the grandchildren, her voice soft with memory. Just those 2 words, "Come inside." And everything changed. She died on a warm August evening, the kind of evening that reminded her of the day she had first arrived at the ranch. Her children were with her, holding her hands, and her last words were about Vincent. "Tell your father I am coming home," she whispered, and then she closed her eyes and was gone. They buried her next to Vincent on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, under a sky so blue it seemed to go on forever. The whole community came to pay their respects, because Adelaide and Vincent Zimmerman had been pillars of their community, known for their generosity and kindness, and the way they had built a life based on love and mutual respect. Thomas and Clara continued to run the ranch, teaching their own children the values their parents had lived by. Help those in need, stand up for what is right, love completely and without reservation, build something that lasts. The ranch itself stood for generations, a testament to what 2 people could build when they truly loved and supported each other. And every new generation heard the story of how it all began, with a frightened girl hiding behind a barn and a kind man who said 2 simple words that changed both their lives forever. "Come inside." Those words became a family motto of sorts, a reminder to always open your door to those in need, to see people rather than problems, to have the courage to love even when love seems risky or inconvenient. Adelaide and Vincent's legacy was not just the land or the buildings or the horses, but the example they set of what a life built on kindness and love could become. In the end, that was what mattered most. Not the fear and desperation that had brought Adelaide to Vincent's door, but the love and joy and partnership that had flourished in the years that followed. They had built something beautiful together, something that lasted long after they were gone. And it all started with a rancher finding an obese girl hiding behind his barn, seeing her fear and her need, and offering her 2 words that would change everything. Come inside.